Hi there, everyone, and welcome to anyone who may end up listening to this video. I am joined with my friends and colleagues, David Kennedy and Red Keating and Lynn Galeazza, and we're part of the supportive care counseling team here at Hospice, and we just wanted to take a few minutes today to speak to you about coping with our grief during the holiday season, which can always present some challenges to us as we move into any holidays, but also particularly remembering that this year this brings some new challenges and things for us to plan for, given that we continue to live through this pandemic. So to start us off, David, I'm wondering if you'd like to just share some of your initial thoughts, maybe some guidance or advice, things for us to keep top of mind as we move into the holiday season. For those of us who may have grief, recently bereaved, or bereaved from a long time ago.
Thanks, Julie. And I think one of the great challenges that I've discovered over the years in working with people around particularly the holidays at this time of the year is that they reflect so much of our memories and our history, and they come with so many expectations of how we are wanting to do this holiday season. And it comes from traditions. I mean, there's many general traditions that we experience in our culture, but then each family has their own history of traditions of how they like to celebrate. And grief doesn't allow us to do that often. It just doesn't provide us with the energy or the willingness to do what we've always done. Now, sometimes people want to do that, but in a large case, it's just very difficult to face the idea of doing things the way we've always done it. So what I would say to people is simply be realistic about your expectations. That just because you have always celebrated the holidays this way doesn't mean that that's the way you can do it this year. And the way you do it this year doesn't mean that that's the way it's always going to be. It's just like, let's just take this year and the uniqueness of this year, and that includes the COVID challenge of it's going to get in the way of some of those realistic expectations, but allowing ourselves and giving ourselves permission to not feel the expectations to do this holiday season the way we've always done it.
Thank you. Red, would you like to add anything else? I'm thinking specifically about families who may have young kids, who may still be really excited about some of those traditions, and with maybe parents or other family members who may be struggling with carrying on some of those traditions, as David mentioned.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece, because kids are going to be kids. The sadness that might be pervading inside the family at the time can't be held, at front and center and present at all times. And so kids are still going to need to play, to have gifts, to have Santa, to experience some of the joy and mystery that is Christmas. And they're going to potentially do that the same way they would have done every year. And that doesn't mean that they may have forgotten the loved one that is not with them this Christmas. It just means that kids need to go and be kids. And for adults, sometimes that can be a little grating because they're not in that place of grief all the time, the way I might be as a parent, or I might feel that I need to be as a parent. As David was saying, expectations, sometimes that expectation is that we need to grieve all the time. And just as much as kids need to have that moment of play or fighting, or interacting with their siblings in a way that siblings interact, and they get on each other's nerves, and they bicker and fight back and forth. Those things are still going to happen at Christmas time, and they need to continue to happen because you're still a family. And I think as parents of young kids, we need to realize that that's sort of natural and normal too, and just expect that those kinds of things are going to happen just the same, even though this might be a Christmas like none other that you've had. But the little ones are going to still have to play. They're still going to want Santa. They're still going to have all of those expectations, as David said, about what Christmas actually means from their experiences in the past. And as a parent, I think it's good to maintain traditions for your kids, and it might be also okay to, if you feel like introducing a new tradition, that's okay too.
Thank you, Red. Lynn, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts to add to what's been offered, particularly given this season, we're moving into holiday season amidst this pandemic, which none of us have ever done before.
Thanks, Julie. I'd like to pick up on the points around uncertainty that both Red and David highlighted, and encourage people to make a plan and to make multiple plans about what the holidays may look for them. It's quite possible you don't know what exactly your needs are. There could be different scenarios that you're having to adjust to, and so just spending a little bit of time to explore what may come up and how you may choose to respond. And I think within that, what's important is that you also give yourself permission. So permission to change the plan, to check in with yourself, and share with your loved ones. Maybe you are going to have to change your plans and adjust.
Thank you. I think one of the things I'd just like to add to all the wisdom that's been shared here is that something I often hear working with people with their grief is sometimes there's this natural judgment that arises about our grief, that, you know, when we often talk about grief coming in waves, and sometimes those waves catch us off guard. We don't see them coming, and yet, you know, we can have these emotions rising up that often surprise us. And the holiday season is one of those times they can come up. And just encouraging people to turn towards those emotions, those feelings of grief, whatever those feelings may be, with a sense of compassion and kindness, a sense of tenderness, the way that we might when we see somebody else we care about suffering. There's this real tendency to kind of say, like, what's wrong with me? Or, you know, why do I have these tears? Or why do I have this irritability? And a really simple thing to do is just to turn to ourselves and say, well, I'm grieving and this hurts. And it doesn't take the hurt away, but sometimes we add suffering to our suffering by judging our own suffering, by judging those feelings. And so I just like to extend just some encouragement or suggestion that we turn towards that, our own experience, just like we would to others, with some compassion and tenderness. And before, as we just kind of wrap up our talk today, David, I'm just wondering, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to add?
I think, and this has been really good I really appreciate everybody's contribution. I think the only thing I would add is simply to have that compassionate piece toward ourselves, as you said, Julie. But also, there's a great little poem, and John O'Donohue talks about, may my life be lived as a river flows, always surprised by its unfolding. And I think that we can get surprised, or sometimes we get almost ambushed during the holiday season with our grief. I think I would just caution people not to judge it, but as you said, Julie, to be kind toward it. One of the things I've discovered is that people steel themselves to get through Christmas, and then they get really surprised when it comes to New Year's. And Christmas is the way we look back and all of the grief around our memories. But New Year's is a time when we're looking forward, and that grief at that moment, when the realization that that person I love is not going to be here this year, can really overwhelm us again. So I just encourage people not that, and it's going to be different for everybody. What is that trigger for me? What is that little event that might come? And to be compassionate with yourself, and that we will survive this. That's the way to do it. Thank you.
We may feel a little bruised and beaten up at times. Yeah. Red, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'll pick up on something that Lynn spoke about there in terms of, for everyone, the concept of this Christmas with the pandemic and our expectations of what that means, it creates that need to balance everybody's sort of different level of risk tolerance. And I think one of the things that can be helpful is if we sort of prepare ourselves to understand what our level of risk tolerance is, because we might feel in a bit of an emotionally weakened state and be pushed one way or the other into a place of discomfort. So I would say people should probably really assess their own sense of risk tolerance and stick to that, and allow that to be a sort of a partner in decision making about what we do this Christmas. And that all boils down to sort of the things that we've been talking about in terms of expectation. And I would just go back to the little thing about the kids, is some kids can get caught up in the fun and the joy of Christmas. And it's okay if you do too, as the parent or the adult, to get caught up and feel joy and laugh. That's okay. As long as it's not followed by large waves of guilt for having had fun. And it is a season that lasts more than a day. It is one day, but we look at that sort of Christmas as a season of potentially a week or weeks, and that inside that it's okay to laugh as well as cry. It's okay to feel the joy as well as the sorrow, and that is just all a part of the package that grieving is at this time.
Thank you. Lynn, any final thoughts?
And really just reinforcing the messaging that all of you have said, and I just would encourage people to really just take care of yourself, take care of you.
Yeah.
And I just want to finish off by saying I think we also recognize that there's a lot of ambiguous grief that has come with this pandemic, that perhaps some of us have lost people during this time, and we haven't had some of the traditions and rituals that we normally do around death. But there's also been lots of other kinds of losses, things we haven't been able to do, people we haven't been able to be with. And so I just want to take a moment just to recognize that, in a sense, we're experiencing a collective sense of losses and grief, our entire communities. And so that will bring maybe some moments of challenge as well. And again, as has already been said, I think holding all of our experiences with a sense of compassion can really help us make space for the totality of our experiences. So thank you, everyone, today. We hope that we wish you all well, blessings for this holiday season, and thanks for listening with us.